Martha's house sat directly across from mine, a small brick place with a narrow porch, a hedge that had gotten too tall, and a porch light she kept on every night even when she was home. I was halfway down my driveway when I heard a loud metal clatter from her side yard. Milo pulled toward the sound. I followed him around the hedge and found Martha standing beside a tipped-over trash bin, both hands locked around the handle. "You planning to move that by staring at it?" she asked. "I was going to ask whether you needed help." "I didn't ask you to." "That is usually how I know you need it." She gave me a look, but it almost turned into a smile. Martha was 78, though she would correct anyone who said it like it explained her. She wore a green cardigan, old gardening gloves, and house shoes that probably should not have been anywhere near wet grass. The bin had a cracked wheel. She had tried to drag it to the curb, and it had folded sideways. I set Milo's leash around my wrist and lifted the bin upright. "Careful," Martha said. "That thing has more personality than you think. It has one wheel. It has opinions." I rolled it to the curb while she stood there pretending she had only allowed me to do it because I was already involved. When I came back, my eyes went to the orange notice on her door. Martha saw it too. "That is nothing," she said. "It is bright orange." "Exactly. They want you upset before you read it." I looked at her. "The HOA? Who else would spend money making paper look smug?" She reached for the notice, but I got there first. I did not open it. I just held it out to her. "Can I read it?" "No." "Martha." She took the envelope, stared at it for a second, then handed it back. "Fine, but do not start talking to me like I need rescuing. I was going to talk to you like I work in county records and know when paperwork is trying too hard to sound important." That got a small laugh out of her. Inside was a formal violation letter. The porch steps had visible structural deterioration. The backyard fence was leaning beyond acceptable standards. The hedge was overgrown. There was also an inspection fee added to her account. She had 14 days to handle all of it. After that, the daily charges would begin. I read it twice. Then I looked past her toward the porch. The second step dipped slightly in the middle. I had noticed it before, but Martha always carried herself like she could manage anything, so I had never pushed. "This is a lot for 2 weeks," I said. "It is a house. Houses need things." "Sure, but they are asking for a contractor, a fence crew, and a landscaping company all at once." "I know what they are asking." Her voice had changed, still firm, but tighter. I folded the paper carefully and handed it back. "Do you have the HOA bylaws?" "I have every HOA bylaw they ever printed." That sounded personal. It became personal around 1997. She opened her front door and stepped aside. "You have 10 minutes. After that, you go to work and leave me to my own bad decisions." Martha's house always smelled like coffee, paper, and furniture polish. Her living room had shelves from floor to ceiling. Not decorative shelves. Real shelves, packed with labeled boxes, folders, binders, old neighborhood newsletters, meeting notes, property photographs, and envelopes with dates written across the front in black marker. I stopped just inside the doorway. "You kept all this?" "I was a librarian for 31 years, she said. "Throwing away records feels like leaving the stove on." She led me to the dining room, where a stack of folders sat on the table beside a sugar bowl and a pair of reading glasses. "HOA, she said, tapping one box. "Road plans, property maps, tree disputes, the Great Mailbox Argument of 2009. There was a Great Mailbox Argument? 3 meetings and 1 man who cried over a brick post. I sat down and opened the oldest binder she gave me. The pages were neat. Martha had saved meeting minutes, rule changes, inspection letters, and handwritten notes from neighbors. At first, I was only looking for the rule about notices and repair deadlines. I wanted to see whether 14 days was normal. Then I found an older violation letter. Same orange paper. Same wording. Same inspection fee. It had been sent to Mrs. Doyle, who used to live 3 houses down from Martha. I flipped a few pages and found another one. This one was addressed to Mr. Pritchard, who had moved in with his daughter last spring. The porch, the fence, the yard, almost the same list. I laid both notices beside Martha's. She stood behind my chair, quiet for once. "You remember these?" I asked. "Of course I remember them," she said. Mrs. Doyle cried in my kitchen when hers came. I looked at the 3 letters lined up on the table. Same orange paper, same demands, same short deadline. And for the first time, it did not look like Martha had a house problem. It looked like somebody had a method. I took pictures of the 3 notices with my phone before I went to work. Not because I had some big plan. I just knew papers had a way of disappearing once people got nervous. That evening, I came home with a folder from the county office tucked under my arm. Nothing confidential. Just public property transfers, parcel maps, and sale dates. The kind of thing anybody could request if they had patience and a printer. Martha was waiting on her porch with 2 mugs of coffee. "You look pleased with yourself," she said. "I look tired." "That is your normal face. Today, it has purpose." I sat beside her and opened the folder. Mrs. Doyle's house had been sold 8 months after her notice. Mr. Pritchard's had sold 3 months after his. Both properties had gone through the same company, Pine Ridge Residential. Martha leaned closer. "Pine Ridge," she said slowly. "I have seen that name." "Where?" She went inside without answering. I heard drawers opening, boxes shifting, and what sounded like her arguing with a filing cabinet. A few minutes later, she came back carrying a yellowed neighborhood newsletter. "Here," she said, pointing to a small list at the bottom. "Sponsors for the summer block party. Pine Ridge Realty. That was 10 years ago." I looked at the names around it. Then I saw one printed below the sponsor list. Warren Smith. At the time, he had been vice president of the HOA board. "You know anything about the company?" I asked. Martha shook her head. "Only that Warren's wife has a brother who sells houses, or used to. I remember because he always wore those shiny shoes to meetings, like he expected the carpet to admire him." I checked the business records online after dinner. Pine Ridge Residential was registered to a man named Nick. Martha was right. Nick was Smith's brother-in-law. That did not prove anything by itself. Families knew each other. People did business with relatives every day. But when I looked at the sale prices, something felt off. Mrs. Doyle's house had sold below the value of the homes around it. Mr. Pritchard's had too. Then both were renovated and listed again months later for much more. I printed everything anyway. The next Saturday, Martha and I drove over to see Mrs. Doyle. Her daughter answered the door and looked surprised when she saw us. "Oh, Martha," she said. "Mom talks about you all the time." Mrs. Doyle was sitting in a recliner near the window. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her voice was clear when Martha asked about the orange notice. "That letter came every week in a different form," Mrs. Doyle said. "First the hedge, then the porch, then the paint around the window." "Did they ever offer help?" I asked. She laughed once. "They offered a compliance company, said they could manage repairs and bill me later." "Did you use them?" "No. I called a contractor. He gave me a number I could not pay." She looked down at her hands. "After the fines started, my son said I should sell before it got worse." Martha reached over and squeezed her wrist. "Who bought the house?" I asked gently. Mrs. Doyle looked at me. "A nice young man from some local company. He said he wanted to preserve the neighborhood." On the ride home, Martha stared through the windshield. That is what they always say when they mean change it without asking. Our second visit was to Mr. Pritchard's daughter, who lived across town. She was less polite than Mrs. Doyle. "They wore him down," she told us from her kitchen table. "That is what happened. My dad had heart trouble. He could not keep climbing up ladders, and the letters kept coming. Every time he paid for one thing, they found another. Did he talk to the board? I asked. He tried. Warren Smith told him the rules were the rules. Said exceptions made neighborhoods decline. Martha's mouth tightened. Mr. Pritchard's daughter slid a stack of papers toward me. Keep them. I do not need reminders. There were 5 violation letters, each one more detailed than the last. The same inspection fee, the same deadline language, the same warning about escalating daily charges. By Sunday night, I started a group chat. I named it Maplewood Records because I did not want it to sound dramatic. I added Martha, Mrs. Doyle's daughter, Mr. Pritchard's daughter, and a few residents whose names I found in old notices. For the first hour, nobody said much. Then someone wrote, "My mother got one of these too." Another message came in. They told us the fence had to be replaced immediately. Then, another. They inspected my aunt's house 3 times in 1 month. By midnight, there were 12 people in the chat. One of them was Hank, a retired surveyor who lived near the entrance to the neighborhood. I knew him mostly as the man who wore suspenders while mowing his lawn. His message was short. "Your maps do not match the original development plans." I stared at it for a second before answering. What does that mean? His reply came almost immediately. "It means I still have old copies. Come by tomorrow." The next day, I told Martha about Hank's message while she stood in her kitchen cutting lemons for iced tea. "So now we have a surveyor," she said. "We have a retired surveyor. Those are often more dangerous. They have time." That afternoon, a few teenagers from down the street showed up at Martha's house with hedge trimmers and gloves. I had not asked them. Their mother had seen the group chat and volunteered them before they could object. Martha met them at the porch with a clipboard. One boy looked at it and said, "You made a schedule?" "I made 3, Martha told him. "Do not touch the rose bushes. They have survived 2 marriages and a bad mayor." A retired carpenter named Leon came by to look at the porch steps. He did not treat Martha like she was unable to speak for herself. He asked her questions, showed her where the wood had softened, and let her choose what could be reinforced now and what could wait. By evening, the hedge was trimmed back. The porch felt steadier, and Martha's yard had people in it again. She stood on the porch handing out lemonade, correcting everyone's technique, and pretending she was not happy. Later, we held a small potluck in her backyard. Nothing formal. Folding chairs, paper plates, a crock pot of beans, somebody's store-bought pie. But people talked. They talked about expensive paint requirements, new roof demands, notices sent after spouses passed away, neighbors who sold too fast because they were scared of charges piling up. Then Hank unfolded an old map across Martha's patio table. He tapped a section near the main road. "The road expansion is planned right here," he said, "and these houses along this side are closest to it." I looked at the map. Then I looked down Maplewood Lane. Martha's house sat almost in the middle, and suddenly, all those orange notices started to look less like enforcement. They looked like pressure. The next morning, I found an orange envelope on my own front door. For a second, I just stood there, with Milo beside me, looking at it like it had been placed there by hand. Maybe it had. The HOA sent most notices by email now, but apparently paper was better when they wanted you to feel it. The letter said, "My backyard shed violated the neighborhood guidelines." It was the same shed that had been behind my garage since before I bought the house. Small, gray, ugly, and mostly full of tools I did not use often enough. According to the notice, its placement and roof color required review for compliance. There was no fine yet, just a request to respond within 7 days. I read it twice, then carried it across the street. Martha was sitting at her kitchen table with a pencil behind one ear, sorting old meeting notes into piles. She saw the envelope in my hand and did not say anything right away. "Well," she finally said, "that was fast." "They inspected my shed." "They inspected your nerve." I dropped the letter onto the table. "This is ridiculous." "Yes." I have not done anything wrong. No, you have done something worse. What? You paid attention. Write in the comments. Would you keep digging after the HOA sent a notice to your own house? Or would you step back before it turned into a fight you never wanted? I leaned against the counter and looked out her kitchen window. Her backyard was quieter now that the hedge had been cut back. You could see more of the street from there. More houses, more porches, more places where people had been living beside each other for years without really knowing what was happening behind the curtains. I did not sign up for this, I said. Martha kept sorting papers. I know. I wanted to help you understand one letter. That was it. I know. Now they are looking at my house. She nodded once, still calm. For some reason, that made me more irritated. You are not going to tell me I have to keep going? No. I looked at her. Martha set down the pencil. Andrew, you have a job. You have your own home. You have a dog who looks at you like you are responsible for all weather patterns. You can stop. She said it plainly. No guilt in it. Then she picked up the orange envelope and turned it over in her hands. But that is how it works, she said. One person gets tired. One person gets busy. One person decides it is not worth the trouble. Then the next person gets the same letter alone. I did not answer. Martha looked at me over her glasses. Every neighbor they pushed before you probably said exactly what you said. I did not sign up for this. And they were right. Nobody signs up to be treated like a problem in their own home. That afternoon, I went back to my house and ignored the group chat for almost 3 hours. Then Hank called. Come to Martha's, he said. Bring your county maps. What did you find? Something that should have been noticed a long time ago. When I got there, Martha had cleared the dining table again. This time it was covered with maps, so old the paper looked soft around the edges. Hank stood over them with a ruler, a magnifying glass, and a modern survey printout spread beside them. He did not look up when I entered. See this line? He said. I put my folder down and leaned over the table. A thick blue line ran behind several homes, then angled toward the HOA clubhouse near the neighborhood entrance. Utility easement, Hank said. Original plan from 1986. Water and electrical access. And, I asked, and the clubhouse foundation sits across it. I looked closer. The old map showed a clear strip of protected space. The newer survey showed the clubhouse pushed partly over that same area. That cannot be right, I said. Hank tapped the modern page. It is right. I checked the parcel boundaries twice. Martha pulled a folder from beside her chair. I knew the clubhouse had been moved, she said. The first plan had it farther back. People complained about parking, so the board changed it. Was the easement moved? I asked. No, Hank said. Not according to any record I can find. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then I understood why it mattered. Smith had been sending notices over porches, fences, paint, sheds, and hedges. He was presenting the HOA as strict and careful about every inch of the neighborhood. But the clubhouse itself might be sitting where it was not supposed to sit. And if the road expansion moved forward, that easement could become a much bigger issue than Martha's porch steps. Hank pushed his glasses up his nose. This is not something we whisper about in a driveway. We need clean copies, old maps, current surveys, meeting minutes, everything lined up. Martha nodded. No guessing, no dramatic speeches before we have the facts. That was the moment the whole thing changed for me. Until then, I had been angry. I had been worried about my shed and Martha's fines, and the way older people had been pushed into selling homes they loved. Now I saw a way to make the truth hard to ignore. Over the next few days, the dining room became a work table. Mrs. Doyle's daughter emailed copies of notices. Mr. Pritchard's daughter found old payment records. Hank marked the easement on clear overlays. I pulled public sales information and printed the company records connecting Pine Ridge Residential to Smith's family. Martha found old board minutes showing when the clubhouse location had changed. Neighbors came in after work and sat wherever there was room. Someone brought sandwiches. Someone else brought a portable scanner. Teenagers who had trimmed Martha's hedge helped label folders and stack copies. Nobody called it a campaign. It was just people doing what Martha had taught them to do. Keep the records, compare the dates, and do not let anyone tell you that your memory is the only proof you have. Late one night, after everyone had gone home, I stood by Martha's front door with my folder under my arm. "I still do not like this," I told her. "Good," she said. "People who enjoy this sort of thing are usually exhausting." "I mean it. I am not doing this because I think you cannot handle yourself." Martha's expression softened, just a little. "Then do not do it for me, because I am old," she said. "Do it because they counted on all of us being alone." I looked down the street. For the first time in a long while, I did not see separate houses. I saw a row of people who had started talking. The HOA meeting was held on a Thursday night in the clubhouse. I had been inside that building plenty of times before, but never with a folder full of records on my lap and Martha sitting beside me in the front row. She wore a dark blue jacket, her good shoes, and the pearl earrings she said were reserved for situations involving foolish men and folding chairs. Hank sat on her other side with a tube full of survey copies. Behind us were Mrs. Doyle's daughter, Mr. Pritchard's daughter, Leon the carpenter, 3 teenagers from the hedge crew, and more neighbors than I expected. Someone had invited a reporter from the local paper. She stood near the back wall with a notebook in her hand, pretending she was there by accident. Warren Smith walked in at 7 sharp. He looked exactly the way he always did at neighborhood events. Crisp shirt, polished shoes, calm face. He shook hands with board members, smiled at people he barely knew, and took his place behind the long table at the front. For a moment, I wondered whether he saw the folders. Then his eyes landed on Hank's survey tube. His smile changed, but only slightly. The meeting started with routine items, parking reminders, a complaint about trash bins, a note about landscaping around the entrance sign. Then Smith cleared his throat. "Next," he said, "we have a compliance matter involving the Martha property." Martha sat up straighter. Smith read from a sheet of paper. He listed the porch steps, the fence, the hedge, and the inspection fee. He used the same smooth voice he probably used with every person who had received one of those orange notices. "The board's goal," he said, "is to preserve neighborhood standards fairly and consistently." Martha raised her hand. Smith paused. "Martha?" She stood before he could say anything else. "I have lived on Maplewood Lane for 42 years, she said. Her voice was not loud, but the room became quiet anyway. "I paid every HOA fee. I followed every rule I was given. I helped neighbors when they had babies, when they lost jobs, when they were sick, and when their houses caught fire." Nobody moved. Martha looked directly at Smith. "I have watched people on this street bring food to a family that had nothing in the refrigerator. I have watched teenagers shovel driveways without being asked. I have watched this neighborhood act like a neighborhood." She held up the orange notice. "And lately, I have watched this board treat people like obstacles on a map." Smith leaned forward. "Martha, this is not personal." "No," Martha said. "That is exactly the problem. It is not personal to you." A few people murmured. One board member shifted in her seat. Smith tried to continue. "The rules apply to everyone." "That sounds good," Martha said, "until you notice who keeps receiving the same rules at the same time." She sat down. For a second, I forgot I was supposed to speak next. Then Hank nudged my elbow. I stood and carried the first folder to the table. "My name is Andrew Turner," I said. "I live across from Martha. I work with public records, and what we found is simple enough to explain." Smith's face stayed calm. "Mr. Turner, this is not on the agenda. It concerns the agenda item you just read." One of the board members, a woman named Mary, looked at the folders in front of me. "Let him speak," she said. I opened the first packet. "These are violation notices sent to Martha, Margaret Doyle, Raymond Pritchard, and other residents on the same side of the neighborhood. The wording is nearly identical. The deadlines are nearly identical. Most of the homes later changed hands." I placed copies of the property transfers in front of the board. "Several were purchased through Pine Ridge Residential. That company is owned by Nick." Smith finally spoke. "That is a private company." "Yes," I said, "and Nick is your brother-in-law." The room went quiet again. Smith folded his hands. "My family relationships have nothing to do with HOA enforcement." "Maybe," I said, "but residents were pressured over costly repairs, then their homes sold below nearby values to a company connected to your family. That deserves questions." The reporter in the back started writing faster. Mrs. Doyle's daughter stood up next. Her hands shook a little, but she kept going. "My mother did not want to leave," she said. "She was exhausted. Every time she fixed one thing, another letter came. She thought she was the only one." Mr. Pritchard's daughter spoke after her. "So did my dad." Then Leon stood and explained that Martha's porch was repairable. It had needed work, yes, but it had never required the kind of expensive, immediate project the notice made it sound like. By then, Smith was no longer looking at the room. He was looking down at the papers. Hank stood last. He unrolled the old development map across the board table, then placed the newer survey beside it. "This is the original utility easement," he said. "It runs directly under part of this clubhouse." One board member leaned closer. Hank pointed at the marked line. "The clubhouse foundation crosses protected access space. The original layout showed the building farther back. The location changed, but the easement did not." Mary looked at Smith. "Is that true?" Smith's answer came slower this time. "I would need to review those documents." "You have had years to review documents," Martha said. Nobody laughed. It was not funny anymore. The board members began talking quietly among themselves. One asked whether the city had been notified. Another wanted to know why the clubhouse issue had never appeared in prior maintenance reports. Smith tried to regain control. "This meeting is getting off track." "No," Mary said. "It is finally on track." The board called a short recess. People gathered in little groups around the room. Martha stayed seated, holding her purse in both hands. "You all right?" I asked. She looked tired, but steady. "I am fine," she said. "I have waited a long time to say that in a room full of people." When the board returned, Mary read the decision. Martha's fines were suspended immediately. The compliance action against her home would be reviewed by an outside inspector. Smith would be removed from any discussion involving the notices, property sales, or redevelopment plans. The board would request an independent review of the HOA's records and the clubhouse easement. Smith did not argue. He just sat there while the room filled with low voices and moving chairs. A few weeks later, Martha's porch was safe again. Not fancy, not new, just solid under your feet. Her fence stayed where it was under an older property exception Hank helped uncover. The neighborhood group chat turned into a volunteer list for yard work, paperwork, small repairs, and rides to meetings. One Saturday morning, I carried 2 coffees across the street and found Martha sitting on her porch. Down the block, a group of neighbors were working in front of another older resident's house. Teenagers were hauling branches. Leon was checking a loose handrail. Somebody had brought donuts. Martha watched them for a while before taking her coffee. "I thought I was fighting to keep my house," she said. Then she looked down Maplewood Lane. "Turns out I was fighting to remind people they still had neighbors."